They found a grid beneath the pyramids. In 2025, a series of subsurface scans conducted at the Giza Plateau disrupted a long-standing assumption shared by archaeologists and geophysicists alike, that this landscape, one of the most examined places on Earth, had already surrendered all of its secrets. For over a century, the plateau had been mapped, excavated and analyzed with increasingly sophisticated tools. Yet when ground-penetrating radar was aimed deep beneath the limestone bedrock, the data began to reveal something that defied expectation. Far below the surface, at depths far greater than any known ancient excavation, a vast network of structured forms emerged. These were not random voids or fractured stone. They displayed sharp angles, repeating corridors, and deliberate intersections arranged with mathematical consistency. Initial reactions were cautious. Imaging artifacts are not uncommon in deep radar surveys, especially in regions with layered geology. Researchers considered the possibility of signal distortion, resonance echoes, or software misinterpretation. But as additional scans were conducted from different orientations and frequencies, the same patterns appeared again and again. The geometry held, the proportions repeated. What lay beneath Giza was not noise, it was structure. What unsettled researchers was not simply the existence of these mysterious subsurface formations beneath the Great Pyramid, but the profound and unexpected relationship these hidden structures bore to the pyramid towering above them. Initially, the presence of any underground anomaly so close to one of the most studied monuments on Earth was enough to provoke curiosity. Yet as measurements and surveys deepened, it became clear that this was not a random geological coincidence or a simple network of caves and tunnels. Instead, what emerged was a remarkable system of proportional alignments and geometric correspondences that linked the subterranean grid directly to the architecture of the pyramid itself. At first glance, the Great Pyramid seems a singular monumental creation, a masterpiece of stone, mathematics, and engineering rising out of the desert floor. But beneath its feet, hidden from casual observation and buried beneath centuries of sand and sediment, lay a structure that echoed the pyramid's form and essence in ways that defied casual explanation. The ratios discovered underground mirrored those carved into the visible monument, and the angles replicated its precise geometric language. This was no accident. What appeared as discrete elements above and below ground revealed themselves as parts of a single vast design, a design whose scope stretched beyond what was visible to the naked eye. The impact of this realization cannot be overstated. It transformed the entire conversation about the Great Pyramid from one focused solely on surface architecture and the practicalities of construction to a broader inquiry into intention, meaning, and cosmic resonance. Researchers were no longer debating merely what lay beneath the sands, but why it was there and for what purpose it had been crafted to align so perfectly with the structure above. To appreciate the significance of this relationship, one must understand the nature of the alignments themselves. The proportions that tied the subsurface grid to the Great Pyramid were not vague approximations, but precise echoes of mathematical constants and geometrical principles that resonate throughout nature and the cosmos. These ratios, such as the golden ratio and the square root of 2, are fundamental to patterns of growth, balance, and harmony, appearing in everything from the spiral of galaxies to the structure of DNA. Their presence beneath the pyramid hinted at a knowledge of universal order, embedded in stone, that extended through multiple dimensions, both physical and symbolic. Moreover, the angles discovered underground matched the pyramid's own architectural precision. The Great Pyramid is famously aligned to true north with an error margin of only a few arc-minutes, an extraordinary feat given the technological constraints of its time. Beneath the surface, similar exactitude was found in the underground formations, suggesting a deliberate calibration not just horizontally across the desert landscape, but vertically into the Earth itself. It was as if the pyramid above was the visible tip of an iceberg, resting on a hidden foundation of geometry that anchored it to the planet's deeper forces. This notion radically shifted how researchers viewed the monument. Instead of a solitary edifice standing apart from nature, the pyramid was revealed as integrally connected to the Earth's own geometry, part of a vast, multidimensional system of resonance and balance. The buried grid could be interpreted as a kind of subterranean extension or amplification of the pyramid's purpose. Far from being a mere tomb or isolated monument, the pyramid was a node in a larger network, both physical and metaphysical, that linked humanity to cosmic order. With this perspective, the question of intention emerged as central. Why would the builders of the Great Pyramid go to such extraordinary lengths to create a hidden geometric system beneath the monument? What knowledge or wisdom were they encoding not only in stone, but in the very ground itself? The answer lies in the ancient worldview that saw geometry as the language of creation, the blueprint through which the cosmos itself was ordered and sustained. Sacred geometry was not merely a set of shapes or ratios, it was the expression of harmony and coherence that underpins existence. To build in harmony with these principles was to build in alignment with the universe itself, to construct not only a physical structure, but a bridge between the human and the divine. In this light, the subsurface formations can be seen as an integral part of a greater design intended to harmonize the energies of the Earth with those of the heavens, and by extension, the human consciousness that dwells between them. The buried grid, with its precise alignments and proportional echoes, might have functioned as a kind of energetic interface, an earthly counterpart to the celestial alignment of the pyramid. Through this design, the monument could act as a tuning device, synchronizing the vibrations of the planet with those of human awareness, creating a sacred space where the boundaries between matter, energy, and consciousness dissolve. This conception aligns with a growing body of modern research exploring the Earth's electromagnetic grid and the ways in which ancient monuments interact with these subtle energies. Measurements have detected faint electromagnetic anomalies at key archaeological sites worldwide, suggesting that the ancients possessed an understanding of Earth's energetic fields far beyond what was previously imagined. The Great Pyramid's subsurface extensions may represent a deliberate attempt to harness and integrate these forces, embedding the monument not just in the physical landscape, but within the unseen web of planetary energy. Beyond the physical and energetic dimensions, the proportional relationships also carry symbolic weight. The pyramid has long been interpreted as a metaphor for ascent, spiritual, intellectual, and cosmic. Its chambers represent stages of initiation, the soul's journey from the material to the divine. The buried grid, mirroring these proportions beneath the surface, could symbolize the hidden foundations of that journey, roots sunk deep into the earth, holding the structure steady as it reaches for the stars. It is a reminder that transcendence is grounded in the material world, that the mysteries above are inseparable from the realities below. Thus, the discovery of these underground alignments invites us to reconsider the Great Pyramid not as an isolated wonder, but as a holistic creation, part monument, part machine, part map, and part mystery. It speaks to an ancient intelligence that sought to unify opposites, above and below, seen and unseen, earth and sky, matter and spirit. It reveals a civilization whose mastery extended beyond engineering into the realms of cosmology, metaphysics, and consciousness. For researchers, this means shifting from a purely archaeological focus on artifacts and dates to a more interdisciplinary approach that embraces geometry, physics, anthropology, and spirituality. The pyramid is no longer just a tomb or temple frozen in time. It is a living symbol of the ancient quest to understand reality as a unified whole, a quest that continues to this day in the efforts of physicists probing the quantum field, mathematicians mapping hidden dimensions, and seekers exploring the boundaries of consciousness. The relationship between the subsurface grid and the Great Pyramid thus transforms the monument from a static relic into an active participant in the unfolding story of human knowledge. It invites us to listen not just to the stories written on its stones, but to the silent language of proportion and alignment that resonates beneath our feet. A language that speaks of intention, of harmony, and of the enduring human desire to connect with the infinite. The discovery that the underground formations mirror the Great Pyramid's geometry is a revelation that challenges conventional narratives. It suggests that what we see above ground is but a fragment of a far more complex and profound design. The pyramid is not an isolated artifact, but a node in a larger system, a system that integrates Earth, cosmos, and consciousness through the universal language of geometry. This realization compels us to reconsider the pyramid's purpose and the wisdom of its builders. Far from being mere architects or laborers, they were visionaries who encoded knowledge in stone and earth, creating a monument that bridges dimensions and epochs. Their intention was not simply to build a tomb or a monument, but to construct a lasting interface between humanity and the cosmic order, a reminder that true knowledge is grounded in harmony, resonance, and the continuous unfolding of existence itself. As we deepen our exploration of these alignments, we are drawn into a dialogue with the past, an invitation to remember that the mysteries of the pyramid are also mysteries of ourselves. The underground grid beneath the Great Pyramid is more than a buried enigma. It is a call to awaken, to recognize that the universe is not a distant place but a living pattern, one in which we are both participants and reflections. It is the silent testament of a civilization that understood the power of intention and the eternal dance of geometry that holds reality together. Public reaction was swift and polarized. Some interpreted the data as evidence of a hidden city or ceremonial complex lost to time. Others proposed natural explanations involving ancient aquifers shaped by erosion and pressure over millennia. More speculative voices suggested energy systems, forgotten technologies, or non-human involvement. The speculation reached a fever pitch when prominent figures outside academia weighed in, hinting at advanced ancient engineering tied to the Nile's underground flow. But beneath the noise, a more fundamental question lingered, one that cut across all interpretations. Why would anyone construct something so precise, so deep, and so completely invisible? The Great Pyramid itself offers a clue. Its design was never merely ornamental. Its orientation aligns with true north to a degree of accuracy that challenges even modern surveying techniques. Its dimensions encode relationships that correspond to universal constants found throughout nature. The ratio between its perimeter and height reflects circular geometry, while its internal proportions align with patterns observed in biological growth and cosmic structures. These relationships are not cultural symbols, they are mathematical truths. They exist independent of human invention. To embed such constants into stone suggests an intention beyond commemoration or burial. These numbers do not glorify rulers, they do not record victories. They point outward, beyond civilization, toward the structure of reality itself. When these same ratios appear again in the newly identified subterranean formations, the implication becomes harder to ignore. The underground grid appears to follow the same logic, the same mathematical language, as the pyramid above. This consistency implies unity of design, not coincidence. Further analysis hinted that these underground structures were not static voids. Geological evidence suggests that water once moved through portions of the network, guided by gradients and chambers designed to regulate flow. Movement creates vibration. Vibration creates resonance. When matter oscillates within confined geometry, it generates harmonic patterns. Some researchers began exploring whether the system could have functioned as a resonant structure rather than a physical utility. Not a machine in the mechanical sense, but a mathematical system interacting with natural forces. This possibility reframes the purpose of the Great Pyramid itself. No human remains were ever found within its primary chambers. No inscriptions explain its function. Unlike later pyramids, it contains no overt religious decoration. It is precise, minimal, and silent. When examined purely as an object of geometry, it behaves less like architecture and more like a statement expressed through proportion rather than language. In the ancient world, mathematics was never a cold abstraction divorced from the spiritual or philosophical. Instead, it was a living language through which the universe communicated its deepest truths. Numbers and shapes were not mere tools for measurement, they were vessels of meaning, each form a symbol imbued with layers of significance that transcended the material world. For early civilizations, geometry was a bridge between the tangible and the transcendent, a sacred code that united earthly existence with cosmic order. The square, for example, was far more than a simple polygon with 4 equal sides and right angles. It represented the principle of stability and the essence of matter itself. In its perfect symmetry, the square embodied the grounded, the tangible, and the enduring. Its 4 corners pointed to the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, anchoring human experience in the framework of the physical world. It symbolized earthliness and the structure that holds all things in place. Many ancient cultures associated the square with the foundation of reality, the base upon which all creation rests. Contrasting the grounded square, the triangle carried a different but complementary significance. It was a symbol of ascent, transformation, and dynamic change. The triangle's 3 sides and points often represented the connection between the earthly, the divine, and the intermediary. It was a shape that pointed upward, suggesting progress, spiritual elevation, and the journey from the mundane to the sublime. In many traditions, the triangle was linked to fire, light, and the process of becoming, transcending the static state of the square to embody movement and growth. The triangle's presence in sacred geometry invited the viewer to contemplate the possibility of transformation and awakening. The circle, however, was perhaps the most profound of all geometric symbols. With no beginning and no end, the circle represented infinity, unity, and the eternal flow of time and existence. It encapsulated the cyclical nature of life, the rising and setting of the sun, the changing seasons, and the continuous cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. The circle was the perfect symbol of wholeness and continuity, embodying the divine principle of oneness that underlies all diversity. In many ancient cosmologies, the circle was associated with the heavens, the celestial realm where time and space merged into an endless continuum. Together, these shapes, square, triangle, and circle, formed the fundamental vocabulary of sacred geometry. They were not isolated figures, but interconnected symbols, each balancing and complementing the others to express a holistic vision of reality. When combined with precision and harmony, these geometric forms were believed to create a bridge between the physical world and the cosmic order. This fusion of mathematical rigor and philosophical depth was central to the worldview of ancient architects, artists, and mystics. Nowhere is this unity of form, function, and meaning more powerfully expressed than in the Great Pyramid of Giza. This monumental structure stands as a testament to the ancient mastery of geometry as both a science and a sacred art. The pyramid's design integrates the square, the triangle, and the circle into a coherent whole, grounding celestial relationships in solid stone with breathtaking accuracy. The base of the pyramid is a nearly perfect square, symbolizing the earthly realm, the foundation upon which the entire structure rests. This square aligns almost precisely with the 4 cardinal directions, reflecting an intimate understanding of geography and the cosmos. Its corners point true north, south, east, and west. With an error margin so small, it remains a mystery to modern engineers how the builders achieved such precision without advanced instruments. This square base anchors the pyramid in the physical world, representing matter, stability, and the permanence of existence. From this foundation rises the triangular faces of the pyramid, 4 sloping planes that converge at the apex. These triangles symbolize the ascent from earth to sky, from the physical to the spiritual. The triangular form is dynamic and transformative, directing the gaze upward and inviting contemplation of higher realities. Each side of the pyramid is precisely angled to reflect the sun's path and celestial alignments, indicating that the structure was not merely a tomb or monument, but a sophisticated cosmological instrument. The triangle's symbolism of growth, change, and spiritual elevation is etched into every block, every slope of this immense architectural expression. Encasing and encompassing these forms is the concept of the circle, which, though not physically outlined in the pyramid's form, is encoded in its proportions and geometry. The pyramid's height-to-base ratio closely approximates the mathematical constant pi, which relates the circumference of a circle to its diameter. This subtle but deliberate incorporation of the circle's properties ties the structure back to the eternal cycles of nature and the cosmos. The circle's presence reminds us that the pyramid is not a static object, but part of a larger dynamic process, one that integrates time, motion, and infinity into its very essence. The synthesis of the square, triangle, and circle in the Great Pyramid exemplifies how ancient builders embedded profound philosophical and cosmological meaning into architectural form. The pyramid was conceived not simply as a physical structure but as a symbolic representation of the universe itself, a microcosm reflecting the macrocosm. Its geometry was a language that spoke to both the earthbound human experience and the transcendent order of the heavens. Ancient cultures understood that such geometric harmony was not merely aesthetic, but functional. The precise proportions and alignments were believed to create resonance and harmony between the monument, the earth, the cosmos, and human consciousness. Geometry was a tool for tuning reality, aligning physical form with metaphysical principles. This alignment was thought to harmonize the energies flowing through the earth and sky, facilitating a connection between the material and spiritual realms. The Great Pyramid's geometry also encoded the concept of balance, the delicate interplay between stability and change, matter and spirit, finite and infinite. The square base represents grounding and permanence. The triangular faces symbolize movement and transformation, and the circle's presence recalls the unending flow of existence. This balance encapsulates the ancient vision of a universe where opposites coexist in harmony, and where human beings can participate in that harmony through awareness and intention. Such philosophical depth in geometry challenges modern assumptions about ancient knowledge. It reveals that the builders were not only skilled engineers, but profound thinkers who saw mathematics as a sacred language capable of conveying the mysteries of existence. They did not separate form from meaning, science from spirituality, or the physical from the divine. Instead, they embraced a holistic worldview in which every measurement, every angle, and every ratio was a step toward understanding the unity of all things. In this way, the Great Pyramid stands as a timeless monument to the integration of mathematics and meaning, a living testament to the ancient belief that geometry is the language of the cosmos. It invites us to see beyond the surface, to recognize that numbers and shapes carry messages about the nature of reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. Modern science, too, has begun to glimpse the profound connections that ancient cultures intuited. Concepts such as symmetry, fractals, and resonance echo the principles encoded in sacred geometry. Physicists discover patterns in the structure of matter and energy that resemble the harmonies of geometric forms. The alignment of the pyramid with celestial bodies mirrors the modern understanding of the cosmos as a vast, interconnected system where local and universal scales reflect one another. Yet, despite advances in technology and knowledge, the ancient insight remains unique in its integration of meaning and form. Today's mathematics often abstracts away from philosophy and spirituality, reducing numbers to mere calculations. The ancient approach, embodied in the Great Pyramid, reminds us that mathematics can be a language not only of measurement, but of revelation, a way to articulate the profound unity underlying existence. Great Pyramid's design embodies the ancient principle that mathematics and meaning are inseparable. The square, triangle, and circle are more than shapes. They are symbols laden with philosophical weight that express stability, transformation, and infinity. Through their harmonious integration, the pyramid grounds celestial relationships in stone, bridging the human and the cosmic, the temporal and the eternal. It stands as a silent teacher, inviting us to rediscover geometry as a sacred language, a key to understanding the universe and ourselves. This way of thinking was not unique to Egypt. Similar geometric motifs appear across civilizations, separated by oceans and millennia. Complex symmetry appears in sacred diagrams, temple layouts, and symbolic art worldwide. What distinguishes Giza is not the presence of this knowledge, but its concentration and scale. Nowhere else do these relationships appear so deliberately unified. The emergence of a matching geometric network beneath the plateau intensifies this mystery. If geometry is a universal language, then this buried structure may be part of a message designed to endure beyond erosion, conquest, and cultural collapse. Stone decays, records burn, geometry remains. This challenges the conventional narrative of technological progression. The Great Pyramid appears abruptly in history, fully realized, with no clear developmental predecessors and no direct successors of comparable sophistication. Its sudden emergence suggests inheritance rather than gradual invention. Knowledge appears fully formed, as if transmitted rather than discovered. Throughout the vast expanse of ancient Egyptian history, the sacred texts and inscriptions speak repeatedly of divine beings, gods and goddesses, who descended from the heavens to share with humanity the essential gifts of wisdom, measurement, and cosmic order. These figures were revered as supernatural entities with extraordinary powers, capable of shaping the cosmos and establishing the laws that governed both the heavens and the earth. Yet, when viewed through the lens of modern interpretation, there is a compelling possibility that these mythic stories encode something far more grounded. Encounters with advanced knowledge, wrapped in metaphor and poetic symbolism, to communicate profound truths to societies that lacked scientific language. In the mythic imagination of ancient Egypt, gods were not simply remote figures of worship. They were carriers of civilization itself. They taught the Egyptians how to measure time through calendars, how to build architectural marvels with precise geometry, how to harness the rhythms of the natural world, and how to maintain balance, both socially and cosmically, through the principle of Ma'at, which represented truth, order, and harmony. These divine teachers were attributed with the origin of writing, mathematics, medicine, and the arts. Their legacy was not merely religious, but deeply practical, shaping the very foundation of Egyptian culture. However, these divine figures must be understood not only as literal deities, but as symbolic embodiments of knowledge and technological mastery. In a society without scientific tools or conceptual frameworks like those we use today, the appearance of an intelligence intimately fluent in the laws and constants of nature would inevitably be perceived as supernatural. To the ancients, mastery of the forces that governed the stars, the earth, and life itself transcended ordinary human ability and was rightly attributed to gods. From this perspective, mythology functions as a form of memory, a collective recollection filtered through the symbolic language of storytelling, allegory, and ritual. It preserves fragments of historical experiences where ancient peoples encountered knowledge or phenomena that defied their current understanding, encoding these experiences in narratives accessible to their worldview. Myths, then, are neither simple fantasies nor wholly invented fables, but cultural repositories that safeguard truths about the cosmos and humanity's place within it. One key example is the figure of Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, writing, and measurement. Thoth is credited with the invention of hieroglyphics and the establishment of divine laws. In symbolic terms, he represents the archetype of knowledge encoded into communication and structure, the very foundation of civilization. But beyond mythology, Thoth may represent a collective memory of early scientists, engineers, or priest scholars who developed the principles of measurement, mathematics, and timekeeping critical for the Egyptians' achievements in architecture and astronomy. Similarly, the goddess Ma'at personifies the concept of order, truth, and balance. Her feather was weighed against the soul of the deceased to determine moral righteousness, reflecting the broader cosmic principle that the universe is sustained through harmony and equilibrium. The emphasis on Ma'at in Egyptian culture suggests a sophisticated understanding of the importance of systemic balance, both in society and in nature, and an awareness that maintaining this balance is fundamental to the continuation of life and the cosmos. The myths surrounding Osiris, Isis, and Horus also contain layers of symbolic meaning beyond their surface narratives of death, resurrection, and divine kingship. These stories may encode knowledge of cyclical natural processes, regeneration, and the transmission of power through lineage and consciousness. The resurrection of Osiris, for example, can be seen as a metaphor for the cycle of nature, the death of the old, and the rebirth of new life, and by extension, the continuity of knowledge and culture through time. In practical terms, it may reflect rituals designed to preserve memory and societal cohesion across generations. Importantly, the divine origin stories emphasize the transmission of knowledge as a sacred gift, implying that wisdom itself is a form of divine energy or power that elevates humanity. This suggests that ancient Egyptians did not separate the act of learning and discovery from spiritual experience. Knowledge was both practical and sacred, a key to unlocking not only material advancement, but also deeper connection with the cosmos. From the vantage point of modern science, many of the concepts embedded in these myths resonate with advanced understanding of natural laws. For example, the idea that certain gods control cosmic forces aligns with the modern recognition of fundamental constants and forces, gravity, electromagnetism, quantum fields that govern reality. The precise measurement and calibration attributed to divine beings mirror the accuracy required in geometry, astronomy, and engineering. The notion of Ma'at as universal order echoes the scientific quest for underlying laws that create harmony within complexity. This suggests that the stories of gods may have their roots in actual historical moments when ancient people encountered or developed a sophisticated understanding of natural phenomena, moments so transformative and profound that they were mythologized to preserve their significance. These narratives function as symbolic bridges between human perception and the incomprehensible vastness of the universe. Moreover, the language of myth allows knowledge to be transmitted across generations without relying on explicit technical language, which could be lost or misunderstood over time. Instead, metaphor and allegory embed knowledge within cultural and religious frameworks, making it accessible and meaningful within the societal context. In this way, myth becomes a resilient vessel of ancient science and philosophy, encoded in stories that survive millennia. This interpretive approach does not diminish the spiritual or cultural value of mythology. Rather, it enriches it by revealing layers of meaning that link ancient wisdom with contemporary inquiry. It suggests a continuity of human curiosity and reverence for the natural world, spanning from the earliest civilizations to modern science. The gods of Egypt, therefore, may be seen as ancestral avatars of human knowledge, symbolic teachers who introduced measurement, order, and cosmic insight when the world was young. This view also challenges modern assumptions about progress and civilization. It suggests that rather than starting from zero, humanity has inherited an ongoing dialogue with the universe, a conversation initiated long ago and preserved through symbolic memory. The ancient myths become a form of encoded history, testifying to the depth of human insight and the enduring search for meaning in the cosmos. Such a perspective invites us to reconsider the boundaries between science, religion, and mythology. It encourages an integrative understanding where myth is not opposed to reason but complements it. Both are ways of apprehending reality, expressed in different languages and suited to different epochs. Where science provides precise measurements and predictive models, mythology offers meaning, context, and connection to the human spirit. Ultimately, the divine figures of Egyptian myth stand as reminders that knowledge itself can appear miraculous, especially when first encountered. The wisdom they embody points toward the universal constants of nature, the harmony underlying existence, and the possibility that ancient peoples glimpsed the fabric of reality through their own unique lenses. These myths preserve a legacy of wonder and respect for the mysteries of life, encoded in a language designed to endure. By approaching these divine narratives as symbolic memory rather than mere fantasy, we gain insight into how early civilizations made sense of their world, how they celebrated knowledge as sacred, and how they sought to harmonize human experience with the cosmos. This realization opens the door to a richer dialogue between past and present, reminding us that the quest for understanding is timeless and that the wisdom of the ancients still speaks to us, waiting to be heard anew. Whether the source of this knowledge was external or internal may ultimately be irrelevant. What matters is that the knowledge exists, embedded in form rather than explanation. The structure beneath Giza does not tell us who built it. It tells us how reality is organized. As modern tools probe deeper into the Earth, they may be uncovering not hidden rooms but hidden ideas. The possibility that the pyramid was never meant to house the dead, but to preserve understanding, transforms its significance entirely. It becomes not a relic of power, but a repository of principle. Geometry does not age. The same ratios shape galaxies and atoms. If the pyramid encodes those relationships, then it is less a monument to the past than a signal to the future. One that waits patiently for minds capable of recognizing it. What lies beneath Giza may not be a city, a machine, or a tomb. It may be a theorem written into stone and bedrock, expressing a truth about existence that transcends culture and time. And as each scan peels back another layer of sand and certainty, the question grows louder, not quieter. Not what is buried there, but why it was placed there at all. If this interpretation is correct, then the Great Pyramid does not belong solely to the distant past. It becomes something far more unsettling and profound. A forward-facing signal, a construct designed not just to endure time, but to wait for understanding. Rather than a relic frozen in history, it functions like a message written ahead of its audience, placed in plain view yet unreadable until the tools of comprehension finally catch up. Only now, as modern science uncovers the same repeating structures within subatomic particles, space-time itself, and even the architecture of the human brain, does the pyramid begin to resemble less an object of study and more a reflection. Not something we examine from the outside, but something that mirrors what we are only beginning to recognize within reality itself. Throughout history, geometry has been revered as more than mere mathematics. It has been called sacred, forbidden, or divine, terms that hint at a knowledge both powerful and unsettling. Yet, unlike secret codes locked away behind closed doors or hidden manuscripts, this geometry was never truly concealed by walls or by cryptic writings. Instead, its seeming inaccessibility arises from something far more profound. It dissolves one of the most fundamental illusions humanity holds dear: the belief in a strict boundary separating the observer from the universe, the creator from the creation. This geometry is not simply about lines and shapes, angles and ratios. It is a language written by the cosmos itself, a pattern woven into the very fabric of reality. These forms, circles, triangles, spirals, and squares, do not merely exist on paper or in temples. They are expressions of a universal order that permeates every scale of existence, from the smallest particle to the vast architecture of galaxies. To perceive and truly grasp these patterns is to awaken to a truth that overturns our most basic assumptions about the nature of existence. For millennia, humanity has operated under the illusion of separation. that we, as observers, stand apart from the world we perceive, that the universe is an external stage on which our lives unfold. This sense of detachment underpins much of Western thought, underpinning ideas of control, mastery, and ownership. If the universe is something out there, then it becomes an object to be conquered, manipulated, or possessed. This division also creates hierarchies between those who claim authority over knowledge and those who do not, between rulers and subjects, between humans and nature. But the geometry embedded in the natural world does not support this division. Instead, it reveals a deep interconnectedness, a seamless unity where observer and observed are not separate entities, but aspects of the same whole. When we study the proportions found in nature, the golden ratio that appears in the spirals of shells and the branching of trees, the fractal patterns repeating in clouds and coastlines, the symmetry of crystals and snowflakes, we discover that these patterns are not accidental. They are the manifestation of a single underlying order, a cosmic code that unites matter, energy, and consciousness. This realization that the boundary humanity has drawn between itself and the cosmos is in fact illusory, is profoundly destabilizing. It challenges the very foundations on which civilizations have built their systems of knowledge, governance, and power. If the universe and the observer are one, then knowledge cannot be owned or controlled by a select few. It belongs inherently to all of existence. The idea of hierarchy, with its divisions of class, caste, and authority, begins to crumble in the face of this universal unity. For this reason, the sacred geometry was never locked behind secret doors or confined to exclusive teachings. It could not be. Instead, it was encoded in the proportions and harmonies that define the natural world and human creations alike. Patterns that cannot be altered, erased, or censored without disrupting the very fabric they form. Stone temples, pyramids, sacred monuments, mandalas, and architectural wonders all embody these timeless ratios. They speak without words, communicating an unchanging truth through form and symmetry. This method of transmission, embedding knowledge in geometry and proportion, was both a safeguard and a statement. Unlike spoken or written language, which can be twisted, misinterpreted, or destroyed, geometric truths endure. They are universal and immutable. The golden ratio, for example, is not a human invention but a discovery of a natural proportion that appears repeatedly across biology, physics, and cosmology. Its presence in art, architecture, and nature points to a shared language of harmony that transcends culture and epoch. By encoding sacred knowledge in such forms, ancient cultures ensured that it would survive beyond the rise and fall of empires, the loss of manuscripts, or the corruption of teachings. Even when civilizations collapsed or were overwhelmed by conquest, the geometry remained as a silent witness, waiting to be rediscovered by those prepared to see beyond illusion. This endurance highlights the paradox at the heart of forbidden geometry. It is at once accessible to all and available to few. Accessible because it exists in everything, but available only to those willing to transcend the limiting beliefs that separate themselves from the universe. The inaccessibility of this knowledge, then, is not a result of deliberate secrecy, but of the profound psychological and cultural barriers that prevent people from embracing the implications of unity. To accept that there is no separation between self and cosmos is to surrender long-held assumptions about identity, control, and power. It is to recognize that we are not isolated individuals commanding an external reality, but integral expressions of a greater whole. This recognition can be disorienting, even frightening, because it demands a radical redefinition of self and society. This is why the geometry was sometimes called forbidden. Not because it was hidden away by secret societies, but because it undermined the foundations upon which existing hierarchies and institutions rested. Those in power, historically, have often maintained their authority by perpetuating division between rulers and ruled, human and nature, mind and matter. The sacred patterns of the universe, when understood, dissolve these separations, making it impossible to sustain the illusion that knowledge or divine right belongs to a privileged few. In this sense, the forbidden geometry is a symbol of liberation, a key to seeing the universe as a living, conscious entity in which we are embedded. It invites a shift from domination toward harmony, from exploitation toward stewardship, from isolation toward interconnection. The lessons encoded in these proportions teach us that true power arises not from separation, but from alignment, with natural law, with each other, and with the cosmos itself. Moreover, this perspective reframes the role of the observer from a detached spectator to an active participant in the unfolding of reality. Modern physics echoes this ancient insight. Quantum mechanics reveals that the act of observation collapses possibilities into reality, that consciousness plays a role in shaping the universe. In sacred geometry, the shapes and ratios are not passive. They are expressions of dynamic relationships, resonances that mirror the interconnectedness of all things. The permanence of these forms across cultures and epochs suggests a universal language, one that transcends time and geography. From the pyramids of Egypt and the temples of Greece to the mandalas of Tibet and the cathedrals of Europe, this geometry speaks a common truth, that existence itself is patterned, ordered, and meaningful. This global recurrence highlights that sacred geometry is not cultural invention, but cosmic revelation. Ultimately, the geometry once deemed forbidden challenges us to reconsider the very nature of knowledge and existence. It asks us to move beyond superficial distinctions and to embrace a holistic vision where observer and universe, creator and creation are inseparable. It teaches that wisdom is not held in texts or institutions alone, but is encoded in the silent, immutable language of proportion, waiting patiently for humanity to remember. The power of this knowledge lies not in secrecy, but in awakening. As societies progress and scientific understanding deepens, we are rediscovering these ancient patterns and their implications. The walls of separation are dissolving. We are beginning to see that the universe is not a distant mechanism to be conquered, but a living, conscious system of which we are a part. In this awakening, the so-called forbidden geometry becomes a bridge, a reminder that the boundaries we erect between ourselves and the cosmos are constructs of perception, not of reality. It invites us to recognize the sacredness inherent in all forms, the harmony underlying complexity, and the unity that sustains existence. It is an invitation to remember who we truly are, not isolated beings, but expressions of an infinite, interconnected whole. Thus, the sacred geometry, far from being a secret locked away, is an open, eternal message etched into the very structure of life itself. A message that awaits our recognition, understanding, and integration. It calls us to dissolve illusions, to transcend division, and to live in resonance with the boundless pattern that holds all things together. Seen through this lens, the Great Pyramid is not decoration, nor symbolism, but calculation made physical. Its form suggests function rather than display, as if every dimension serves a purpose beyond aesthetics. Even today, engineers struggle to explain how such accuracy was achieved with the tools traditionally attributed to its builders. The structure has stood for over 45 centuries, yet its foundation remains level to a tolerance that challenges modern construction. Each side of its base is nearly identical in length, differing by margins so slight they require laser measurement to detect. Its orientation aligns with the planet's rotational axis itself, not with any magnetic reference that shifts over time. Achieving this degree of precision once would be remarkable. Maintaining it across millions of stone blocks borders on the inexplicable. This consistency suggests planning of extraordinary sophistication, not improvisation, not trial and error, but adherence to a governing framework, a system of proportion applied relentlessly from the smallest stone to the largest span. The pyramid appears to have been executed according to a set of relationships rather than measurements. as though the builders were translating ratios into matter rather than stacking stone by approximation. Those ratios are not arbitrary. When certain dimensions are compared, values emerge that correspond to constants governing circles, growth, motion, and balance throughout nature. These numbers do not belong to any culture. They are not inventions. They appear wherever reality organizes itself, from planetary orbits to biological forms. Their presence within the pyramid is not singular or accidental. It is systematic. The structure's shape itself behaves like a converging form, narrowing upward in a way that mirrors how waves compress energy toward a focal point. This is not merely abstract geometry. Physical tests conducted within its chambers reveal unusual acoustic behavior. Sounds persist longer than expected. Vibrations reinforce themselves instead of dissipating. Frequencies interact with the space in a way that suggests amplification rather than echo. Certain tones resonate with exceptional clarity, producing harmonic patterns that align with neurological states associated with focused awareness and deep introspection. The internal passages reinforce this effect. The ascending corridors, the steep grand gallery, the precisely angled surfaces all appear to guide vibration upward. Granite elements in the central chamber are arranged in a way that interacts with sound and pressure, sustaining resonance rather than dispersing it. The space behaves less like a room and more like a tuned cavity, not passive, responsive. Even features long assumed to be practical, such as narrow shafts extending outward, align precisely with specific regions of the sky. These alignments were exact at the time of construction, indicating astronomical knowledge tied to long-term celestial motion. The structure seems calibrated not just to Earth, but to the sky itself, synchronizing terrestrial geometry with cosmic reference points. Scaling the pyramid's dimensions reveals another layer. When expanded mathematically, its proportions align with planetary measurements. The structure appears to encode a reduced model of Earth itself, not symbolically but numerically. This raises an uncomfortable question. How does a civilization without global exploration leave behind a monument that reflects planetary scale? The answer may lie in worldview rather than technology. To ancient cultures, Earth was not an inert object, but a living system. The pyramid may have been conceived as a nodal point, a place of balance between surface and sky, matter and motion. Modern simulations suggest that its shape can interact with natural electromagnetic fields, concentrating them toward its core. This behavior is measurable. Geometry alone is sufficient to produce it. If such effects emerge unintentionally, they do so with astonishing consistency. Acoustic, electromagnetic, geometric, and planetary correspondences converge toward the same conclusion. The structure obeys proportion as if proportion itself were the source of power. In physics, resonance occurs when systems synchronize. In biology, harmony arises from rhythm. In consciousness, coherence emerges when patterns align. The pyramid may exist at the intersection of all three. Perhaps its builders were not engineers in the contemporary sense, but composers, working in stone the way musicians work in sound. Each element contributes to a larger pattern, one that cannot be fully perceived at human scale, yet remains unmistakable in its coherence. From this perspective, the pyramid resembles a device not meant to move objects, but to preserve understanding. A structure that converts geometry into vibration, vibration into pattern, and pattern into meaning. It is not a monument to death, but a diagram of life itself, a physical expression of universal relationships, frozen into form so they could not be lost. Mathematics does not erode, ratios do not fade. Unlike language, proportion survives collapse, translation, and forgetting. If one wished to send a message across millennia, numbers would be the only reliable medium. Geometry becomes memory. Modern theories increasingly describe reality as informational at its core, governed by repeating structures rather than solid substance. If this is true, then geometry is not decoration but syntax. Constants are not curiosities but instructions. They tell reality how to assemble itself. What makes the Great Pyramid extraordinary is not merely that it contains these relationships, but that it appears built to reveal them. Every constant it reflects seems to bridge the measurable and the ineffable, the physical and the conceptual. It stands where mathematics becomes meaning. If intelligence exists beyond Earth, it would recognize these numbers instantly. They are universal. They do not belong to humanity or even to this planet. They exist wherever reality exists. Geometry is the only language that transcends biology, culture, and time. If communication were intended beyond human history, this is how it would be done. Dismissal is easy. Yet dismissal does not explain precision that persists across thousands of years. It does not explain alignment that surpasses modern capability. It does not explain coherence across so many independent domains. If the builders understood these constants as expressions of living order rather than abstract quantities, then they understood something fundamental: that the universe operates through rhythm, not randomness. That everything from particles to planets to thought itself arises from the same repeating patterns. The Great Pyramid may be a reminder carved into stone, preserving a truth that civilization repeatedly forgets. That existence is structured. That consciousness is not separate from the cosmos, but shaped by the same mathematics. Perhaps that is the enduring message, not that gods once ruled the earth, but that proportion governs all things. A law older than history, written not in scripture but in ratio, a pulse that has no beginning because it never needed one, and so the pyramid remains, silent yet resonant, still expressing the same relationships it always has, waiting not for discovery, but for recognition. Perhaps the most unsettling implication of this discovery is not what lies beneath the pyramids, but what it suggests about intention. If the subterranean grid is real, and the data increasingly suggests it is, then the Great Pyramid was never meant to stand alone. It was the crown of a system, not the system itself. What rises above the desert may only be the visible node of something far larger, something deliberately hidden within the earth, integrated with its natural rhythms rather than imposed upon them. The pyramid above ground captures the eye, but the structure below seems designed to engage the planet itself. When scientists overlaid the radar data with geological maps, they noticed that the grid does not cut randomly through the bedrock. It follows stress lines in the crust, regions where the Earth naturally transmits vibration most efficiently. This is not how quarries are carved, nor how tunnels for transport are planned. It is how resonant systems are designed. Just as a violin's body is shaped to amplify sound, the subsurface lattice appears positioned to magnify the Earth's own oscillations. The grid does not fight geology, it cooperates with it. Recent advancements in computer modeling and geophysical simulations have opened a remarkable window into the ancient mysteries surrounding the Great Pyramid of Giza. These technologies allow us to recreate and study the complex interactions between the pyramid's architecture and the natural vibrations of the Earth. What these studies reveal is nothing short of astonishing. The pyramid does not merely stand as a silent monument upon the desert floor, but actively engages with the planet's own seismic energy in a sophisticated and purposeful manner. The simulations began by introducing low-frequency vibrations into a detailed 3D model of the underground network beneath and around the Great Pyramid. These vibrations are akin to seismic microtremors, subtle, continuous oscillations generated by natural processes within the Earth's crust. Unlike powerful earthquakes, microtremors are faint and almost constant, the Earth's steady pulse that usually goes unnoticed by human senses. Yet these persistent low-frequency waves carry immense information about the planet's internal dynamics and energy flows. When these microtremors were applied in the virtual model, the results defied initial expectations. Instead of dispersing randomly or diminishing as they moved through the subterranean chambers and tunnels, the vibrations were guided, focused, and even amplified. The network of corridors and cavities beneath the pyramid acted as channels, directing the energy inward and upward. This phenomenon was not a matter of simple resonance but a complex form of wave guidance, a natural amplification of seismic energy. The design of these subterranean structures appears far from arbitrary. Measurements and simulations indicated that the underground corridors are arranged in such a way that their geometry reinforces specific frequencies present in the Earth's natural hum. The angles, lengths, and widths of these passages correspond to precise multiples and fractions of these low-frequency waves, allowing the vibrations to travel through them with minimal loss of energy. This architectural tuning essentially converts the pyramid and its underlying structures into a giant seismic waveguide. Most strikingly, the focal point of this converging energy aligns exactly with the bedrock directly beneath the center of the Great Pyramid. This alignment is not coincidental. It suggests intentional design with a sophisticated understanding of geophysical phenomena that far exceeds what would be expected from an ancient culture with rudimentary technology. The bedrock itself, a solid and immovable foundation, becomes a key element of this system, acting as a natural amplifier and conductor of the Earth's vibrations. In effect, the Great Pyramid transforms from a passive monument into an active instrument, one that harnesses the planet's own seismic activity. The Earth itself is not merely the stage upon which the pyramid stands. It becomes an integral part of a dynamic energy system. The continuous, subtle vibrations generated by the Earth are funneled, shaped, and directed upward through the pyramid's stones and corridors, creating a unique interaction between the natural world and human construction. This phenomenon challenges conventional interpretations of the Great Pyramid's purpose. For centuries, scholars have debated whether it was primarily a tomb, a celestial observatory, or a temple. The discovery of this subterranean energy convergence introduces a new dimension, the pyramid as a resonant system, designed to engage with the Earth's vibrational field on a deep and meaningful level. The implications extend beyond mere architectural marvel. The focused seismic energy converging beneath the pyramid's center could have influenced not only the structure's physical stability, but also the surrounding environment in subtle ways. Vibrations concentrated and amplified at such a focal point may affect the electromagnetic properties of the area, possibly generating fields that interact with biological systems or consciousness itself. Some researchers suggest that this could explain reports of unusual sensations or altered states of awareness experienced by those who visit the pyramid. Furthermore, this interaction between natural seismic activity and constructed architecture points to an ancient knowledge of Earth sciences that has been largely overlooked. The builders of the Great Pyramid may have understood the planet not as a passive backdrop, but as a living system with energies that could be harnessed and directed. This knowledge would have allowed them to design structures that resonate in harmony with the Earth, stabilizing and enhancing the monument's presence over millennia. Computer simulations thus reveal a picture of the Great Pyramid as a carefully calibrated instrument, a bridge between the terrestrial and the cosmic. Its subterranean corridors do not merely exist as functional spaces, but serve as conduits for energy flow, transforming the natural seismic vibrations into a coherent, focused force. This force culminates beneath the pyramid's apex, suggesting a deliberate harnessing of the Earth's pulse. Moreover, these findings illuminate the role of natural resonance in ancient architecture. Resonance is a phenomenon where a system vibrates with greater amplitude at certain frequencies. The design of the pyramid's underground chambers appears to exploit this principle, tuning the structure to the Earth's micro-tremors, much like a musical instrument tuned to a specific note. This tuning would allow the pyramid to vibrate sympathetically with the planet, reinforcing the stability of the structure and perhaps generating energetic effects that extend beyond the physical. The concept that the Earth's own energy is channeled through human constructions transforms our understanding of ancient engineering. It suggests that the pyramid was not simply built to last, but designed to live, to participate in a continuous energetic dialogue with the planet. This perspective reframes the pyramid from a static monument to a dynamic, resonant entity. This insight also opens avenues for exploring the relationship between architecture, energy, and consciousness. If structures like the Great Pyramid can harness and focus Earth's vibrations, then it raises questions about how other ancient monuments might function similarly. Could these places have been designed as centers for communal coherence, spiritual awakening, or healing? Could they represent early forms of energy technology encoded in stone? The discovery encourages a more holistic approach to archaeology and architecture, one that integrates physics, earth sciences, and metaphysics. It challenges the modern tendency to separate natural phenomena from human culture and invites us to consider ancient sites as living systems interconnected with the planet's rhythms. This convergence of vibrations under the Great Pyramid reminds us that the Earth itself is an active participant in the history of human civilization. Its subtle energies have shaped and been shaped by the cultures that dwell upon it. The pyramid, in this light, stands as a testament to a lost understanding, one that recognized the Earth's pulse as a vital force, not a passive background. The computer simulations that reveal the funneling and amplification of seismic microtremors beneath the Great Pyramid offer a transformative view of this ancient marvel. The underground corridors serve as waveguides, channeling and converging the Earth's natural vibrations precisely beneath the pyramid's center, making the planet itself a key component of the structure's energetic function. This phenomenon suggests a level of sophistication and planetary awareness in the pyramid's design that challenges conventional archaeological perspectives, pointing toward a deeper relationship between human construction and Earth's living energy. The Great Pyramid emerges not just as a monument of stone, but as an instrument in resonance with the Earth's heartbeat, a symbol of harmony between humanity and the planet. This raises a profound possibility. The pyramid may not generate energy in the conventional sense. Instead, it may act as a transducer, converting one form of natural motion into another. The slow, deep pulse of the planet could be transformed into higher frequency vibration as it rises through the geometry, eventually interacting with the granite chambers above. What emerges at the top is not raw power, but coherence, order drawn out of chaos. Such a system would explain many long-standing anomalies, why the pyramid sits exactly where it does rather than closer to the Nile or aligned with population centers. Why its construction demanded such precision despite no apparent practical reward. Why later civilizations, even when reusing its stones, never attempted to replicate its design. They may have inherited the shell without understanding the function. The idea that ancient builders understood resonance at planetary scale seems implausible only if we assume knowledge progresses in a straight line. History suggests otherwise. Skills are lost as often as they are gained. Entire libraries vanished. Languages died. Ways of perceiving the world collapsed along with the cultures that held them. What survives is not always what was most advanced, but what was easiest to maintain. If a civilization once viewed Earth as a living system rather than inert matter, their architecture would reflect that worldview. Structures would be placed where energy flows naturally. Materials would be chosen for how they respond to vibration, not just for strength. Geometry would be used not to dominate space, but to converse with it. From that perspective, the grid beneath Giza is not evidence of technological excess, but of philosophical alignment. There is also the question of scale. 2 kilometers beneath the surface is not a casual depth. Even today, excavation at that level is a major engineering challenge. But the grid does not appear to have been carved in the way modern tunnels are. The walls are smooth in the scans, consistent, almost grown rather than cut. Some researchers have speculated that water played a role, that the structures were formed gradually using erosion guided by artificial constraints, shaping stone through flow rather than force. If so, the builders may have used time itself as a tool. Water, after all, is the great mediator between vibration and matter. It carries sound with extraordinary efficiency. It responds to frequency. It changes structure under resonance. The annual flooding of the Nile would have sent massive volumes of water through the limestone beneath Giza. If channels existed below, even partially, that movement would have generated pressure waves. Over centuries, those waves could sculpt cavities, refine shapes, and deepen resonance pathways without the need for brute excavation. This interpretation reframes the grid not as a buried city, but as a hydraulic acoustic system. A living architecture that evolved slowly, synchronized with seasonal cycles. The pyramid above may have been completed in decades, but the system below could have been cultivated over generations, tuned incrementally until it reached equilibrium with the planet's rhythms. The repeating ratios detected in the grid reinforce this idea. Golden proportions do not maximize efficiency in terms of speed or volume. They maximize harmony. They produce systems that distribute stress evenly, that resist collapse, that self-correct. Nature favors them not because they are mystical, but because they work. When those same ratios appear underground, mirrored above, and echoed in sound simulations, coincidence becomes an increasingly fragile explanation. Critics argue that radar interpretations can be misleading, that artifacts in the data may create the illusion of structure. This is true, and caution is necessary. But independent scans conducted using different frequencies and angles have reproduced the same patterns. Different teams, different instruments, same geometry. At some point, skepticism must contend not just with possibility, but with probability. If the grid exists, then the Great Pyramid is not merely aligned with light, sound, and earth. It is integrated into a system that unites all three. Light above, water below, stone between. Energy moving through phases, transformed but never destroyed. A closed loop connecting sky, surface, and deep ground. Such a system would not need maintenance in the human sense. It would function as long as the planet does. That may have been the point. To build something that could not be conquered, burned, or forgotten. A structure whose purpose is fulfilled simply by existing, by remaining in tune. Perhaps this is why no inscriptions describe its function. Language changes, symbols decay, but resonance does not care who listens. Geometry does not need translation. The grid beneath the pyramids, if confirmed, would be the ultimate expression of that philosophy. Knowledge embedded so deeply into reality that it becomes indistinguishable from the world itself. We are only beginning to develop the tools to perceive such designs. Ground-penetrating radar, acoustic modeling, electromagnetic simulation. These are modern inventions, but they are teaching us to see in ways that ancient builders may have taken for granted, not with dominance, but with sensitivity, not asking how to force nature to comply, but how to recognize where it already speaks. If future excavations ever reach those depths, they may find no artifacts, no carvings, no evidence of daily life. And that absence may be the clearest message of all, that the purpose was never occupation, but interaction, not storage, but transmission, not power over others, but alignment with something larger. In that light, the phrase, "they found a grid beneath the pyramids," takes on a different meaning. Not a prison, not a city, not a machine in the industrial sense, but a framework, a tuning lattice, a buried score written for a planet-sized instrument. And the Great Pyramid, standing above it all, remains exactly where it has always been. Silent, luminous, unchanged, not waiting to be excavated, but to be understood. If we consider that a profound and holistic wisdom once permeated ancient civilizations, it becomes clearer why so much of their knowledge now appears fragmented, incomplete, or elusive when viewed solely through the lens of modern scientific logic. The tools and methods we use today excel in analysis, breaking down complex phenomena into isolated parts, categorizing and separating each element to study it in isolation. This approach, while extraordinarily powerful in many contexts, can inadvertently obscure the very essence of systems that were originally understood as integrated wholes. Ancient cultures, in contrast, seem to perceive reality not as a collection of disparate objects and forces, but as a unified living tapestry. Sound was not merely vibration in air, it was an expression of energy that permeated all existence. Matter was not inert substance, but dynamic patterns of vibration and light. Light was not just electromagnetic radiation, but a symbol of consciousness illuminating hidden truths. Geometry was not simply abstract shapes drawn on paper, but a sacred language describing the invisible architecture of the cosmos. This worldview embraced what modern science is only now beginning to rediscover, that all aspects of reality are interwoven reflections of the same fundamental order. Instead of dissecting the world into isolated categories, the ancients sought to harmonize with it, to align their knowledge and their actions with the rhythms and patterns that govern existence itself. The Great Pyramid stands as a monumental testament to this holistic approach. It was not constructed as a mere architectural feat or a utilitarian structure solving a particular problem. Rather, it was conceived as a physical anchor, a living symbol of the profound relationship between humanity and the cosmos. Its form encodes a synthesis of principles that span the realms of mathematics, astronomy, spirituality, and consciousness, seamlessly intertwined. In essence, the pyramid serves as a reminder, not just a monument to be admired from a distance, but a guidepost inviting us to remember a way of knowing that transcends the abstraction of modern thought. This knowledge is not something to be deciphered solely through intellectual study or measurement, but to be experienced through resonance, a deep attunement with the world and the invisible harmonies that underlie it. Resonance, in this context, is more than a physical phenomenon. It is a metaphor for how understanding can arise when the observer and the observed become one. When a musical instrument is played, the strings vibrate in harmony with certain frequencies, creating a symphony of sound. Similarly, when the human mind aligns itself with the patterns of the universe, a harmonious state emerges, where knowledge is not forced or fragmented but flows naturally as a shared vibration. The builders of the Great Pyramid seem to have grasped this intimate connection between form, function, and meaning. The pyramid's precise geometry is not an accident of measurement, but a deliberate expression of cosmic proportions, ratios, and angles that echo the underlying mathematical harmonies found throughout nature, from the spiral of galaxies to the delicate curves of seashells. These proportions reflect an understanding that geometry is not merely a tool for construction, but a bridge between the visible and invisible worlds. This holistic wisdom also explains why ancient knowledge often resists conventional analysis. When modern scholars isolate concepts like sound, light, or geometry and study them independently, they risk losing sight of their interconnectedness, the threads that bind them into a coherent whole. Ancient teachings did not seek to divide reality into manageable pieces. Instead, they aimed to convey the unity behind those pieces, the invisible web that connects all things. To engage with this wisdom, then, requires a shift in perception. It asks us to move beyond the habit of categorization and to cultivate a sensitivity to the subtle correspondences that link phenomena across scales and disciplines. It invites us to see patterns where modern thought might see only coincidence, to recognize that the boundaries we impose between fields of knowledge are often artificial constructs born from limited perspectives. The pyramid, therefore, is a tangible embodiment of this integrated worldview. It stands as a spatial metaphor for the relationship between earth and sky, matter and spirit, human and cosmos. Its base represents the grounded stability of the physical world, while its apex points toward the infinite, symbolizing the ascent of consciousness and the quest for unity. The internal chambers and passageways are not merely functional spaces, but stages in a journey of perception and transformation. Moreover, the pyramid's alignment with cardinal points and celestial bodies suggests a deliberate calibration with cosmic cycles. This alignment connects the monument to the movements of stars, planets, and the rhythms of time itself. It is as though the structure is a meeting place between terrestrial and celestial energies, a nexus where earthly matter is suffused with heavenly order. Through this fusion of geometry, astronomy, and symbolism, the pyramid transcends its role as a static artifact. It becomes an active participant in the ongoing dialogue between humanity and the universe. It invites those who approach it to remember their place within a vast and harmonious whole, to feel the reverberations of the cosmos within their own being. This ancient way of knowing stands in stark contrast to the modern tendency to treat knowledge as a collection of facts to be mastered and controlled. The holistic perspective recognizes that true understanding arises not from dominance or separation, but from alignment and participation. It acknowledges that the knower is inseparable from the known, that the act of observation shapes reality, and that consciousness itself is a fundamental aspect of creation. By framing the pyramid as a reminder of relationship rather than a problem to solve, we open the door to a richer encounter with history and science. We begin to see ancient monuments not as relics of a forgotten past, but as living records of a wisdom that remains relevant and accessible. This wisdom speaks across time, calling us to move beyond the confines of reductionism and to embrace a more expansive vision of knowledge. In practical terms, this means rethinking our approach to learning and discovery. It encourages us to balance analysis with intuition, measurement with experience, logic with feeling. It invites interdisciplinary exploration where mathematics dialogues with philosophy, physics with spirituality, architecture with cosmology. Such integration enriches our capacity to perceive patterns that might otherwise remain hidden and deepens our appreciation of the world's inherent unity. Ultimately, the Great Pyramid stands not just as a monument of stone, but as a beacon for a way of knowing that transcends eras and cultures. It symbolizes a path back to a holistic understanding, where meaning is inseparable from form, where knowledge is inseparable from wisdom, and where humanity reconnects with the living patterns of the universe. This path asks us to listen to the subtle harmonies that permeate reality, to attune our senses to the silent music encoded in stone and star. It calls us to recognize that ancient wisdom was never truly lost, only obscured by the limitations of fragmented thought. The pyramid's silent presence is a call to awaken, to remember that beneath the surface of things lies a profound coherence waiting to be experienced. In embracing this resonance, we are invited to move beyond seeing ourselves as isolated beings confronting a distant cosmos. Instead, we recognize that we are integral parts of an unfolding whole, participants in a grand symphony of form and consciousness. The pyramid thus becomes a symbol not only of ancient achievement, but of our own potential to reconnect with a deeper way of being, a way of knowing that honors the unity behind all things. To truly engage with this legacy is to embark on a journey inward as much as outward. It requires us to cultivate a sensitivity to the relationships that underlie existence and to open ourselves to the possibility that meaning is woven into the fabric of reality itself. The Great Pyramid, then, is more than architecture. It is a living invitation to remember, to resonate, and to become attuned to the profound harmony that sustains all life. This may be why attempts to reduce the Great Pyramid to a single function always fall short. It was not only a tomb, nor only a power plant, nor only an astronomical marker. It was all of these, and none of them at once, because its true purpose was not mechanical, but integrative. It aligned human awareness with natural law. The underground network, if it truly exists as mapped, completes that picture. What is above refines perception. What is below stabilizes it. Between the two stands the human observer, suspended between earth and sky, matter and meaning. The idea that consciousness itself was the intended receiver reframes every mystery associated with Giza. The silence of the chambers becomes intentional. The absence of inscriptions becomes clarity rather than omission. Words would have limited interpretation, but geometry does not instruct, it invites. It requires participation. To understand it, one must engage not only the intellect but the body, the senses, the intuitive faculties modern culture has largely ignored. The pyramid does not explain itself because explanation was never the goal. Experience was. This perspective also dissolves the need for a sharp boundary between human and non-human intelligence. Whether the knowledge originated from an advanced earlier civilization, external contact, or an aspect of humanity we no longer recognize, may ultimately be less important than what that knowledge points toward. The patterns encoded at Giza do not glorify their builders. They glorify the structure of reality itself. They redirect attention away from authorship and toward alignment. In doing so, they quietly undermine the modern obsession with ownership of discovery. If humanity once understood itself as an expression of the same geometry that shapes atoms and galaxies, then building in harmony with those patterns would have felt natural, not miraculous. The loss of that understanding would not require catastrophe alone. It could fade through gradual shifts in values, through the rise of abstraction over experience, through the replacement of resonance with representation. Over time, knowledge of how to listen would be replaced by knowledge of how to measure. Something essential would be gained, but something equally essential would be forgotten. The underground grid beneath Giza, resonant, hidden, patient, feels like a deliberate response to that forgetting. It does not announce itself. It waits. It requires technology sophisticated enough to detect it, but also curiosity deep enough to question what detection alone cannot explain. It sits at the intersection of geology, physics, archaeology, and philosophy, resisting containment within any single discipline. In that resistance lies its power. If future generations confirm its existence beyond doubt, the implications will extend far beyond Egyptology. It would challenge linear models of progress and force a reconsideration of intelligence as something cyclical rather than cumulative. Civilizations may rise not by inventing entirely new truths, but by realigning with truths that never left. Advancement would then be measured not by complexity alone, but by coherence. In such a framework, the pyramid is not a relic of the past, but a checkpoint in an ongoing process. It marks a moment when humanity was sufficiently aligned to encode universal principles into matter. The fact that we can now begin to recognize those principles again may indicate not coincidence, but readiness. The rediscovery of resonance, of fields, of interconnected systems across scales mirrors the worldview implied by Giza. Modern physics, with its quantum fields and unified theories, is circling back toward insights that ancient builders may have approached from within rather than without. The most unsettling possibility is also the most humbling, that the architects of this knowledge did not intend to be remembered as gods, teachers, or visitors, but as mirrors. That their greatest act was not construction, but concealment in plain sight. They left behind structures that could survive ignorance without losing meaning, waiting for a future consciousness capable of meeting them halfway. If that is true, then the question, who built the pyramids, may be less important than who are we becoming as we begin to understand them. The geometry beneath the stone does not demand belief. It demands attention. It invites a shift from dominance to dialogue, from extraction to participation. It suggests that intelligence is not proven by control, but by harmony. Perhaps the final revelation is this. The pyramid does not point upward because the answers are in the sky. It points upward because consciousness naturally seeks coherence. The grid below does not descend because truth is hidden in darkness, but because stability comes from depth. Together they form a vertical axis, not of power, but of balance. A reminder that understanding emerges when awareness is grounded and aspiration is aligned. If humanity once knew how to build like the universe builds, then that knowledge was never lost. It was encoded, not in books or bloodlines, but in form itself, in stone, in sound, in proportion. And now, as we relearn the language of fields and frequencies, we may finally be approaching the point where the message beneath Giza is no longer silent to us. Not because it has begun to speak, but because we are beginning to listen. If the law of correspondence truly governs reality, then the Great Pyramid is not an anomaly, but a confirmation. It stands as a frozen echo of the same principles that shape atoms, minds, and galaxies. What makes it extraordinary is not that it embodies these patterns, but that it does so deliberately, with an apparent awareness of scale. It compresses cosmic relationships into human proportions, allowing the vastness of existence to be grasped not through abstraction, but through presence. One does not merely study the pyramid, one stands within it, and in doing so, enters the equation. This reframes the ancient builders not as primitive engineers, but as skilled translators. They translated the dynamics of the universe into stone, the language of vibration into geometry, the impermanence of energy into permanence of form. Translation always requires understanding both languages deeply. To convert frequency into structure is to know how motion becomes matter. It suggests a worldview in which reality was experienced as a continuum rather than a collection of separate domains. Modern science is only now beginning to approach this understanding again. The boundaries between physics, biology, and consciousness are dissolving. Information theory suggests that reality is less about substance and more about pattern. Quantum field theory tells us that particles are excitations of underlying fields. Neuroscience reveals that perception is rhythmic, oscillatory, dependent on coherence between neural networks. Everywhere we look, the same truth emerges. Stability is not static, it is sustained resonance. Seen through this lens, the pyramid's endurance is no longer mysterious. Structures decay when their internal order breaks down. Systems collapse when coherence is lost. The Great Pyramid persists because its design minimizes internal conflict. Its geometry distributes stress evenly, its mass dampens disruptive frequencies, its proportions align with natural harmonics rather than resisting them. It does not fight the environment, it participates in it. Longevity, in this sense, is not about strength, but about harmony. This may explain why the pyramid evokes such a powerful psychological response. Visitors often describe a sense of stillness that feels active rather than empty, a quiet that seems to observe back. These reactions are typically dismissed as emotional projection, yet similar responses are reported across cultures and eras. Perhaps the structure interacts subtly with the human nervous system, not through mysticism, but through resonance. The body, after all, is an electromagnetic system. It responds to fields, rhythms, and spatial proportions whether we consciously register them or not. If consciousness is indeed sensitive to geometry, then environments shaped by harmonic ratios could influence awareness itself. This idea is no longer fringe. Studies in architectural neuroscience show that certain proportions affect mood, cognition, and stress levels. Sacred spaces across cultures independently converge on similar geometries, domes, spirals, axial symmetry, not because of shared tradition, but because of shared biology. The Great Pyramid may represent the most refined application of this principle ever achieved. In that context, the question of immortality becomes less symbolic and more technical. Immortality is not the survival of flesh, but the persistence of pattern. Everything that exists is temporary as matter, but durable as information. Waves pass, but the equations that govern them remain. If one could align a pattern perfectly with the fundamental structure of reality, that pattern would not vanish. It would recur, resonate, reappear wherever conditions allowed. The pyramid may therefore function as a template rather than a container. It does not preserve a body, but a relationship. It encodes a way of being in tune with the universe. Anyone capable of recognizing that encoding can, in principle, recreate the state it represents. This is why its message does not expire. It does not belong to a single culture or era. It belongs to consciousness itself. Such a perspective dissolves the tension between science and spirituality. Both become methods of attunement rather than systems of belief. Measurement and meditation converge as different approaches to the same goal, alignment with truth. The ancient builders may not have separated these paths because they had no reason to. To observe was to participate, to calculate was to contemplate. Knowledge was not accumulated, it was remembered. This idea of remembrance is crucial. It implies that understanding is not linear progress from ignorance to enlightenment, but cyclical return to coherence. Each civilization rediscovers fragments of an underlying order, interprets them through its own tools, and eventually forgets the context that gave them meaning. The Great Pyramid survives these cycles precisely because it does not explain itself. It cannot be outdated, it can only be re-encountered. If future research confirms that its geometry mirrors quantum resonance, planetary ratios, and cognitive harmonics simultaneously, then the implications are profound. It would suggest that intelligence, whether human or otherwise, is defined less by technological capability and more by perceptual integration. Advanced knowledge would not be characterized by control over nature, but by intimacy with its patterns. In this light, the pyramid is not a relic of lost technology, nor evidence of external intervention. It is evidence of internal coherence. A civilization capable of such construction would have viewed itself not as separate from the universe, but as an expression of it. The boundary between observer and observed would have been thin, perhaps non-existent. The enduring mystery, then, is not how they built it, but how they perceived the world. What mode of awareness allows one to sense ratios before naming them, to feel geometry before formalizing it, to hear harmony in stone? That mode may still exist within us, dormant, overridden by abstraction, but not erased. Moments of insight, aesthetic awe, sudden clarity may be glimpses of it resurfacing. The Great Pyramid does not demand belief in any particular narrative. It does not require gods, aliens, or forgotten empires to be meaningful. Its significance lies in what it reflects back to us. A universe structured, not random. A reality governed by resonance. A consciousness capable of alignment. If eternity is possible, it is not because time stops, but because pattern continues. And if immortality exists, it is not granted, but achieved through harmony. The pyramid stands as a quiet assertion of this truth. Not speaking, yet saying everything. Not moving, yet vibrating still. In its shadow, the question is no longer whether we can unlock its secrets, but whether we can recognize ourselves within them. Because if the universe is geometry, and geometry is awareness made visible, then the pyramid is not pointing outward to some distant origin. It is pointing inward, toward a level of understanding humanity has touched before and may yet touch again. Here, the idea deepens even further. If geometry is the skeleton of reality and vibration, its breath, then consciousness may be the force that allows the universe to recognize its own shape. What we call awareness might not be something produced inside the skull, but something that emerges when matter aligns itself with certain harmonic conditions. In that view, the brain is not the source of thought, but a transducer, converting universal patterns into personal experience. The pyramid, then, would not be sacred because of symbolism alone, but because it embodies those same conditions in stone. It becomes a place where matter, geometry, and frequency meet in near-perfect balance, creating an environment where perception itself could shift. Consider how modern neuroscience describes altered states of awareness. During deep meditation, sensory boundaries soften, time perception dissolves, and the sense of self expands beyond the body. Brain activity becomes more coherent, less chaotic, oscillating in synchronized rhythms. This coherence mirrors what physicists describe when systems enter resonance, energy loss decreases, information flows more efficiently, and order emerges spontaneously. If ancient builders understood this intuitively, They may have designed spaces that encouraged such coherence, not through belief, but through structure. The pyramid would not impose meaning, it would invite alignment. This reframes ancient ritual entirely. Instead of prayer as petition, it becomes calibration. Instead of worship, participation. Standing within a harmonic structure, the human nervous system could synchronize with larger planetary and cosmic rhythms, producing experiences later interpreted as encounters with gods or journeys to the afterlife. These were not hallucinations in the modern sense, but perceptions shaped by environments deliberately engineered to alter consciousness. Myth would then be the language used to describe experiences that exceeded ordinary cognition. The notion of a grid beneath the pyramids fits naturally into this framework. A grid is not merely a physical network, but a pattern of relationships. In physics, fields exist everywhere at once, defined not by objects, but by interactions. If the Earth possesses subtle electromagnetic and acoustic pathways, then placing monuments at specific nodes would amplify their effects, much like placing instruments at points of maximum resonance on a vibrating surface. The pyramid complex would function as part of a larger system, not isolated structures but components in a planetary design. What is striking is that similar alignments appear across the globe. Megalithic sites often occupy geologically active regions, places where the Earth's crust is thin or stressed. These areas naturally emit electromagnetic fluctuations and acoustic phenomena. Ancient cultures consistently marked them as sacred, long before modern instruments could measure such effects. This suggests not superstition, but sensitivity. A civilization attuned to subtle environmental signals would experience the planet as alive, responsive, communicative. Sacred geography would emerge naturally from direct interaction, not abstract theory. Over time, as societies grew more complex and hierarchical, that sensitivity may have faded. Knowledge, once experiential, became symbolic. Geometry became calculation rather than perception. Ritual became repetition rather than exploration. Eventually, the original purpose of these structures was forgotten, leaving only their outer forms. What remained were tombs, myths, and unanswered questions. Yet the structures themselves never stopped functioning. They continued to resonate, silently interacting with the planet, waiting for observers capable of asking the right questions again. This is where modern science re-enters the story. With tools capable of detecting minute fluctuations, we are beginning to rediscover what ancient builders may have known without instruments. We measure standing waves, resonance cavities and field amplification, then express surprise when stone behaves like a device. But stone is not inert in the quantum sense. At microscopic scales, crystalline structures vibrate, store information, and interact with electromagnetic fields. Granite, rich in quartz, exhibits piezoelectric properties, converting pressure into electrical charge. In a structure of massive scale and precise geometry, those effects could become significant. Seen this way, the pyramid is not an anomaly, but an early experiment in applied physics, one conducted with a different epistemology. Instead of isolating variables, it integrated them. Instead of reducing complexity, it embraced it. The goal was not control, but harmony. Modern technology seeks to dominate energy, to extract and consume it. Ancient technology may have sought to cooperate with energy, to guide and reflect it. The difference is philosophical, not technical. If consciousness is indeed linked to resonance, then evolution itself may follow harmonic principles. Civilizations rise when coherence increases and fall when it breaks down. Knowledge is not lost because it is destroyed, but because the conditions required to access it disappear. Incoherent societies cannot perceive coherent truths. They see monuments but not meaning, measurements but not music. Yet the information remains embedded in form, waiting for alignment to return. This suggests a future that is less about invention and more about reintegration. As quantum physics, neuroscience, and information theory converge, the artificial boundaries between matter, mind, and meaning dissolve. The questions ancient builders asked are resurfacing, now framed in equations rather than hymns. What is reality made of? How does observation shape existence? Can order emerge without force? Each answer points back to resonance, to pattern, to geometry, as the silent organizer of all things. If humanity learns this lesson again, the implications are profound. Architecture would no longer be purely functional or aesthetic, but cognitive. Cities could be designed to enhance clarity, cooperation, and psychological balance. Technology could amplify awareness rather than distraction. Energy systems could work with planetary rhythms instead of against them. In such a world, the pyramid would no longer seem mysterious. It would appear inevitable. The idea that the builders were more human is not a claim of superiority, but of orientation. They may have lived closer to the source of experience, less buffered by abstraction. Their intelligence was not sharper, but broader, extending inward as much as outward. When that balance was lost, progress continued, but wisdom lagged behind. We gained power while forgetting proportion. The grid beneath the pyramids, whether physical, energetic, or symbolic, represents connection. It reminds us that nothing stands alone, that every structure participates in a larger pattern. The pyramid endures not because it defies time, but because it aligns with it. It does not resist change, it resonates through it. And perhaps that is the quiet message embedded in its form. Not instructions, not warnings, but an invitation. An invitation to remember that reality is not something we inhabit, but something we participate in. That consciousness is not an accident, but a feature of the universe recognizing itself, and that when matter, mind, and meaning fall into harmony, what emerges is not mystery, but clarity. The grid was never hidden. It was always there, beneath the stone, beneath the myth, beneath our forgetting. The moment we tune ourselves to its frequency, it becomes visible again, not as a revelation from the past, but as a mirror of what we are becoming. What this passage ultimately gestures toward is a reconciliation that humanity has been circling for as long as it has been able to wonder. The split between subject and object, between observer and observed, between mind and matter, has always been provisional. It exists not because reality is divided, but because perception is limited. When the ancients encoded their understanding in stone, they were not attempting to dominate nature or explain it away. They were attempting to remain aligned with it, to fix in form a truth they understood would otherwise dissolve into abstraction over time. The idea of a forbidden equation does not imply secrecy in the conventional sense. It implies something that cannot be grasped through reduction alone. Modern science excels at breaking phenomena into parts, isolating variables, and extracting rules. Yet the deeper physics goes, the more it encounters relationships that cannot be separated without losing their meaning. Entanglement, superposition, and non-locality all resist intuitive explanation because they describe wholes that cannot be fully understood by examining fragments. In this way, physics begins to echo the insights once expressed through sacred geometry, that reality is fundamentally relational. The pyramid's power, then, does not lie in a hidden chamber or a lost inscription, but in its capacity to embody relationship. Earth and sky, square and circle, stillness and ascent are not symbols layered onto the structure, they are the structure. Anyone who stands before it becomes part of that relationship, drawn into a dialogue between proportion and perception. The experience precedes interpretation. Meaning arises not from decoding but from resonance, from the quiet alignment between inner awareness and external form. This is why the pyramid resists final explanation. Every attempt to pin it down as only a tomb, only an observatory, only a power plant feels incomplete. Each theory captures a facet but misses the whole. That incompleteness is not a failure of scholarship. It is a reminder that some truths cannot be exhausted by description. They must be encountered. The builders understood this. They chose geometry because it communicates without language, because it survives translation, because it speaks equally to intuition and intellect. When modern thinkers suggest that the universe is informational at its core, they are touching the same insight from a different angle. Information is not matter, yet matter cannot exist without it. It is pattern without substance, order without weight. Likewise, consciousness cannot be weighed or localized, yet without it the universe would have no witness, no reflection, no meaning. The forbidden equation binds these together, not as components in a formula, but as aspects of a single process, awareness expressing itself through structure. In this light, the pyramid becomes less an artifact of a vanished culture and more a participant in an ongoing conversation. It is not finished. It continues to interact with light, gravity, magnetism, and human attention. Every generation brings new tools, new metaphors, new questions, and the structure meets them where they are. To mystics, it speaks of ascension. To engineers, it speaks of precision. To physicists, it speaks of fields and resonance. None of these readings cancel the others. They accumulate. The idea that the pyramid mirrors the human mind is not metaphorical in a casual sense. The mind itself is hierarchical, layered, and directional. Sensation forms the base, perception refines it, insight emerges through integration. At the peak, there are moments of unity where distinctions collapse and experience becomes whole. These moments are brief, difficult to sustain, yet profoundly transformative. Cultures across the world have described them in different languages, but the structure of the experience remains remarkably consistent. The pyramid externalizes that structure, making an inner process visible. This convergence of inner and outer is what gives rise to the sense that the monument is alive. Not alive biologically, but dynamically. It participates in flows of energy and attention. It accumulates meaning without being changed by it. In doing so, it challenges a deeply ingrained modern assumption that progress requires replacement. The pyramid suggests another possibility, that endurance itself can be a form of intelligence, that stability can coexist with depth. The forbidden equation, then, is not waiting to be solved like a puzzle, it is waiting to be inhabited. Each time a culture rediscovers the importance of harmony, proportion, and coherence, it moves closer to that equation. Each time it forgets and fragments itself through excess abstraction or domination, it moves away. The cycle is not tragic, it is instructive. Forgetting creates the conditions for remembering. Loss sharpens recognition. This is why the passage emphasizes remembrance over revelation. Revelation implies something external breaking in. Remembrance implies something internal resurfacing. When physics and ancient geometry converge, it feels uncanny not because it is new, but because it is familiar in a way that bypasses logic. It resonates. The mind recognizes a pattern it did not know it remembered. As technology accelerates, yet the questions remain constant. What is reality made of? What is consciousness? How do we live in coherence rather than conflict with the larger systems we inhabit? Each era answers in its own vocabulary. The builders of Giza answered with stone and silence. We answer with equations, simulations, and machines. Both are attempts to touch the same underlying order. If the universe builds again, as the passage suggests, it does so through us. Not as chosen inheritors, but as inevitable participants. Awareness is the universe's way of folding back on itself, of testing its own patterns, of exploring its own possibilities. When we align with those patterns, creation feels effortless. When we resist them, entropy dominates. The pyramid stands as evidence of alignment sustained across millennia. The most radical idea here is also the simplest, that nothing essential has been lost. The knowledge did not vanish, the capacity to perceive it dimmed. As that capacity returns through science, introspection, and integration, the ancient and the modern begin to recognize each other, not as rivals, but as reflections. The forbidden equation reveals itself not as a secret to be guarded, but as a truth that emerges whenever awareness, matter, and meaning fall into harmony. And perhaps that is why the story feels unfinished. Because it is. The equation does not end in stone or theory. It continues wherever consciousness learns to see itself clearly. In that sense, the pyramid is not behind us. It is ahead of us, waiting at the point where understanding becomes remembrance, and the universe once again recognizes itself through human eyes. What separates our age from theirs is not intelligence, but emphasis. We rely on instruments to extend our senses, to translate reality into numbers we can manipulate and predict. They relied on perception sharpened through alignment, on an intimacy with pattern that allowed structure to emerge naturally from understanding. Where we measure, they felt. Where we calculate, they embodied. Yet both approaches converge at the same threshold, where certainty dissolves and mystery remains. At that boundary, the universe does not retreat. It waits, quietly familiar, as if it has been here all along, watching us circle back toward it. Nothing essential was ever misplaced. Truth did not vanish into legend or sink beneath the sands of time. It was preserved in forms that outlast language, encoded in ratios that repeat across scales, embedded in light, number, and awareness itself. The Great Pyramid is not a relic demanding belief or allegiance. It does not ask for faith. It invites recognition. To stand before it is not to feel overwhelmed by antiquity, but to experience a subtle resonance, a sense that something within you already understands what you are seeing. The weight you feel is not historical. It is familiar. That familiarity arises because we are not separate observers peering into a finished universe. We are participants in an ongoing process. Creation did not conclude in the distant past. It continues through perception, thought, and understanding. Every insight is the universe reflecting on its own structure through us. Every question we ask is reality, testing the limits of its own self-awareness. In that sense, humanity is not an end point or a footnote. It is a continuation. We are not outside the design. We are one of its expressions. The builders of the Great Pyramid may have understood this more clearly than we assume. Their alignment to the stars was not an attempt to escape the Earth or worship distant lights. It was a gesture of coherence, a way of placing human existence within a larger rhythm. By mirroring cosmic order on the ground, they were not reaching upward. They were turning inward, recognizing that the same structure governing the heavens also operates within consciousness. The true orientation was never astronomical alone. It was perceptual. Seen this way, the pyramid becomes a mirror rather than a monument. It reflects not what humanity once was, but what it is capable of remembering. Eternity, in this context, is not endless duration. It is continuity of pattern. What persists is not material form, but coherence. Civilizations rise, technologies evolve, languages fade, yet the underlying geometry remains accessible to any mind capable of attuning to it. That is why the structure still speaks without words. As we push deeper into the unknown through science and exploration, we often imagine ourselves venturing into uncharted territory, but again and again our discoveries echo insights once expressed through stone, myth, and proportion. This does not diminish modern knowledge, it completes it. The journey forward loops back on itself, revealing that progress and remembrance are not opposites, but partners. The future does not abandon the past, it recognizes it. In that recognition, something subtle shifts. The universe is no longer an object to be conquered or decoded, but a process to be participated in. Awareness becomes an active force, not an accidental byproduct. Meaning is not imposed from outside, but emerges through alignment. This is the quiet lesson encoded in the pyramid's stillness. It endures, not because it resists time, but because it resonates with it. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey through the universe on frontiers of infinity. If this glimpse into the unknown has sparked your curiosity, be sure to subscribe and join us, where we unravel the darkest mysteries of space.